Hello and welcome to this session of Building and Incorporating Virtual Reality into Your K-12 Classroom. This session is part of our Building Engineers in K-12 Classrooms virtual conference. It's a brand new tech ed conference hosted by Moore County Schools. We're in the Sandhills of North Carolina. We were pushed online in our inaugural year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but we look forward to welcoming you to Moore County in the future for face-to-face iterations of this conference in years to come. Look out for more information on that in the coming months, but for now, I hope you'll find this session is helpful for your practice. My name is Will Herring, and I'm an Instructional Technology Facilitator, or DIF as we refer to them in Moore County. I'm based out of Union Pines High School, and before I went into technology facilitation, I was a social studies teacher at the high school level for 10 years. I'm particularly passionate about helping fine arts, social studies, and ELA teachers incorporate STEM into their courses where they add depth and clarity to those topics and increase relevancy pieces for all learners. So while we're talking about clarity, here's the game plan for this session. We're going to look at each of the following. Number one, what will virtual reality experiences add to your course? 2, how do you find existing VR experiences for your students? 3, how you and your students can create your own virtual reality experiences. And we'll get into some ideas for each curriculum topic there as well. And then 4, what are the logistical considerations for using virtual reality in my classroom? So let's talk about number 1 for just a couple of minutes before we get into the meat of the session. What will VR add to your course? So let's drop back and make sure we have the same vocabulary. What do we mean when we say VR in this context? So before I say what this is, let's acknowledge that in true virtual reality, the viewer has autonomy to move and interact with everything. They can explore the scenes in a non-linear way. The virtual world reacts to the viewer's actions. So what we mean at this point when we say VR in our classroom could better be stated as VR-like or VR-lite. Our students use mobile devices and headsets to explore set scenes with limited interactivity and limited controlled navigation. It's a one-way interaction where the viewer views scenes in the order they are presented by the instructor. Now that's not to say that these VR-lite experiences are without student choice. Once in, the student is placed inside the scene. They can look around in all directions. They can find their own meaning and chase their own interests. We're going to see in a few minutes how, with minimal effort, the students can see the sights and sounds of anywhere in the world. So why VR in your class? It is cool. You're going to get the kids' attention for sure. But getting past the cool, though, there's meat there as well. Virtual reality is going to activate your kinesthetic and your spatial sense learners. Immersion heightens curiosity. Students naturally want to know what is around them, even if it's virtually. So they explore the scene. If it's an animated or interactive scene, they want to know how the pieces work together in systems. Now, some of the magic going on is that you're simulating what some students naturally do in their brain. They take that two-dimensional drawing in a book or an image from your smartboard, and they imagine that in a three-dimensional space, and they go to that place in their mind. VR does that for them and models it for the students who don't naturally visualize sights or objects. It makes that place real. Seeing the world reinforces tolerance and understanding outcomes as well. Students hopefully are also learning how to learn in VR, as many of them may well be training at some point in this platform for their careers. Everyone from manufacturing line workers to surgeons are now using virtual reality to train. I'll give you one more reason to do this from our observations here in Moore County Schools. Virtual reality as an activator works really well when there is either no prior knowledge in the room or there are differing levels of prior knowledge in the room. So when you're studying a science system like the heart, none of our students really have a functioning understanding of that system that they can base new learning on. Now, the Heart VR as an activator gives them that mental structure to contextualize that new information that you're going to provide. Secondly, our students with very limited experience outside of our district, they have trouble visualing other places and other cultures. Again, that VR as an activator opens their eyes to the bigger world and gives them a context to study about a place or a people. It gives everybody in the room that common foundation that you can now activate and then teach from. Okay, so we've talked about the why of VR. Everybody's ready to jump in. So let's do that. All right, so there are three levels that I would consider of ways you can use expeditions. And these go from left to right, increasing independence, increasing customization. So the first is you can search your Google Expeditions that already exist. Remember, there's about 1,000 of these out there. You can find one and use it as is. Just keep in mind that these were written by a different teacher or maybe somebody that works at Google to fit a purpose that may or may not align with yours. So just be aware of that. Now, they're going to give you a script, they're going to give you questions in there, but you don't have to use them. Only the teacher sees those, so you could certainly just show the images and then make up your own content there. And then last but not least, you can start from scratch. Now, one thing that I've found when I've been working for Google Expeditions or working towards these in a classroom is, out of the 1,000 or so that exist, at the high school level, we've got 50, 60 different courses trying to do 100 different things each. So even though there is 1,000, that doesn't necessarily meet my needs. So, for example, in a ELA 1 class, our ninth graders here, when they're doing Elie Wiesel's Night, there was nothing that really matched up to our needs. So what we decided to do was to make our own. And that's where we jump from Google Expeditions into Google TourCreator. Tour creators play out just like expeditions, but in this case, you're creating your own tour. So the great news is now that you have, you're going to do these in your course, there are a lot of materials out there that already exist that you can take advantage of and bring into your classroom. So our next phase here is how can I search existing VR experiences? All right, so where do I search? You're going to know a lot of these names. Discover VR has them. Merge is producing quite a bit. Nearpod is making them as well. This market is ever growing. A lot of our education partners already are trying to fill that space because they know we are using them more and more and will continue to do so. Keep in mind that some of these are paid features, some are free. It depends on the producer and what you have access to. For this course, we are looking at Google Expeditions in particular. Now, part of the reason for that is the sheer quantity of them. Part of that is that they are more accessible than others as they're free apps where you get these from versus some of the counterparts that I just showed you. There are over 1,000 of these VR experiences now. In addition to that, there are a few hundred augmented reality experiences as well, which is outside of the scope of what we're doing here, but something you should explore. These are available on Android, Chrome OS, and iOS. So regardless of device, more likely you have access to some of these. So there's several different ways to search for expeditions. Now keep in mind that whichever one you finally find, you're going to have to download it to your teacher device. So that will mean an app when the time comes. But as far as searching these 900 plus expeditions, there are a few different ways to get there. Here are two of my favorite ways to do it. First is by map. I made these, hopefully made these to where you can get that bit.ly pretty easily to find this site. When I click there, now I have a view here where I have the entire world and they've mapped out the expeditions. So if I were a science teacher and I'm doing a lesson about biomes, I could start here at the north and then work my way down towards the equator and then back out towards Antarctica. Another way I could do that is if I'm that world history teacher or that world geography teacher. This would be a good view as well. If I'm the foreign language teacher, I could do this for a Cultures Around the World project. So that's the map view. Now there's a different way to do it. So the map view, again, if I was that world history teacher, I may want, yes, I want the northern region of China, but I want it in the context of Genghis Khan. So that map view doesn't give you any sort of time perspective. So you may be better off using a keyword search if you know exactly what you're looking for. This will pull up a Google Sheets. And then you have all the search features that are built into a Google Sheet. Just by holding down Command F on an Apple or Control F on a PC, you'll be able to find this pretty easy to use. Keep in mind that what you consider a keyword may not be the author's idea of a keyword, so you may have to play with it a little bit. Now, in both of these resources, both the map as well as the spreadsheet, you're going to see that each one has a name, and that name is how you would eventually search for it in the app to download. Here in the next column over, you will see a list of sites or a list of scenes inside of that expedition. So in this case, for 5 Points in Queens, the first would be the loading dock, second would be the artists, 3 would be the exterior in 2012, exterior in 2013, and finally the exterior in 2014. It gives a location and a brief description of what's going on in that expedition. So that would tell you, at least as the author had it, what this one's going to focus on and where it's going to take you. Keep in mind that you can edit these as you need to as well, but this would be kind of your starting point. If you're looking for something that already exists, you would try to match this up as closely as possible with your learning objectives. All right, so we're ready to actually make our own Google Expedition through TourCreator. So to get started, we're just going to search TourCreator, or we can type in arvr.google.com/TourCreator. So for this to work, you need to be logged in with the same account that you would be using with students. So if you're a Google EDU Suite user, you would go ahead and log in with that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Get Started. Once this loads, I'm ready to begin. So now I will tell you, I went ahead and made a cheat sheet here. What I have here is what will become the title or the topic of what my example TourCreator is going to be. I would always recommend doing this kind of storyboard activity to make sure that you're always driving towards a point and that your scenes are making sense. You kind of have an idea of where you want to end up before you get started. It's going to save you time as you're making your slides. In this case, we're going to be looking at a 4-scene story. Scene 1 will be what life was like before settlement. Scene 2 will be what was creating the change in their way of life. Scene 3 is the conflict, and Scene 4 finally is the resolution. I've also done a little bit, this will make more sense in a minute, but for a couple of these I've already picked out my setting. And I also have some points of interest. Those will be what I highlight within my scenes. So here we go. The first step here in TourCreator is we click New Tour. We're going to give that a name. I can give a description here. And I'll select a cover photo. This photo is going to end up being what you'll see when people search for this, or what you see on the card when you search for it. So I'll just grab a stock photo here for that. Now here we go. I do have this warning here just to make sure that I'm still using the same Google account that you will use for expeditions, and create. This asks me for my first scene. Now if you've ever seen the Google car riding around, then that's going to make a lot more sense for this next piece. So as you know, that car rides around and it takes 360 images throughout the country. These are also pulled from anyone that's ever uploaded a 360 photo as well. So here I search by place, or I can just pull out and see the entire map of the US. And I can take my little guy here, and anywhere where there is a dot, I can drop him and use that as one of my scenes. If I don't quite like the one I have, I can go to the next one. I can preview what that would look like by using my mouse, click and drag around to see where this scene is. And again, go to the next one. Now in this case, you see that these are dots instead of a continuous line. So these are just 360 photographs that have been uploaded. This is the one I want, so I'm going to click Add Scene. It's asking me to give this a title, so I'm going to choose Before Settlement on the Great Plain. You'll see now that I have a name of the title here. This is my first scene. at the bottom, I can add a new scene. I can set a starting point for my viewers. And I'll save this one right here. So now when their headsets wake up, is what I call it, or when their scene comes alive, they'll all be looking the same direction here. Not critical, but it is nice to give them that same orientation. This next line, description, is where I would put in what I want people to see, this would be my script for this particular scene. So I fast forwarded a little bit here. Now you can see that I have written a description in here. Welcome to the Great Plains, look around. And I've also added a couple of activator questions, asking the students here to kind of tap into their senses. What do you notice about the climate and the geography? And then have them guess about where they think they're at in the US. Let me draw your attention down here to a couple other things. Now, this option right here adds scene narration. That is not terribly useful for us in a classroom. The reason I would ask you to think about that is if you've got 25 devices running in your room at one time and they're slightly off on this particular, this audio, it's going to be chaotic. No one will take anything from it. So I would encourage you probably don't use that, at least in the context that we're talking about. But let me do steer you over here. Now this one is ambient audio. You can, in this case, we could add in some grassland noises. We could add in some, depending on what else is going on, we can make, the cricket sound. We can make wind rustling through the grasses as well, just to kind of get that extra sensory stuff going on inside this image. The way you do that is you simply click to begin. In this case, you would be uploading audio. Now, I actually grabbed a little bit of an MP3 from a website that had that available for everyone free. So I'm going to upload that. I can preview it. That sounds pretty good, so we'll drop that in. You could run into that same issue where you've got 30 different versions of that noise going on at different times. So one way around that would be to actually just turn the settings on the phone, turn the volume down on that. And then if you have your projected device or maybe your teacher device, you could play that sound through that device. So you're only getting the one track playing. And they still get the added value there, but without the chaotic cacophony of noise. So this all looks good to me. So now I'm ready to add some scenes, or I'm sorry, add some points of interest. So at the bottom right, I find add point of interest. I go back to my script here that I made. The first one I want to do is the Great Plain. So I'll call this the Great Plain. And here I want to explain to them where they're at and the significance of this place. I'll have my image here, and I've already downloaded my images. We go up a folder. And here we go. I'll add that. Notice that I can drag this around within the student's view. Remember, their starting point is this direction. I can also resize as I want to as well. So I can make that as prominent or as small as I'd like. So again, I can add this here. I can add text that would go along with this picture. In this case, I'm going to click to add my next point of interest. And this one is going to be about the nomadic living. So I'll jump back. I think I'll drag this one over this way. Oop, lost him. Let's make this one right here. So, add a photograph here. Click to select. Again, I have these already on my hard drive. And add. Again, resize as you'd like. And move around as you'd like as well. My last spot in this particular scene is going to be about buffalo hunting. We're going to take this one all the way around. So part of the reason I'm having them move all the way around, guys, is to get the students a little bit more active, to get them moving just a little bit, because I think activity does a good thing for us in the classroom of keeping interest and again getting your tactile learners there. All right, so let's grab this quick picture of a traditional hunt. . 'Cause 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 'c we go. All right, so I've got this scene put together. I'm going to resize this guy just a hair, and now I'm ready to go to my next scene. So I find at the bottom, I'll click next scene, and I'm back here to my map. So just some last second things here. I've built out the rest of my presentation. I've got the beginning, middle, and end of my story. Just know if you decide, you can always rearrange these the scenes by just clicking and dragging those around. You can also add a multitude of other little features to it. Google's always adding a little bit more. Let's say I'm totally ready for this. I'm ready to share it with my students. I'm going to click Publish to Poly. I'll leave it on public, but you do have the option to leave it as unlisted as well. I'll click Publish. Now what that's going to do, the reason it had me sign in with the same Gmail account is that that's going to sync to what will become my teacher device. So if that's an iPad or even my cell phone, if I'm logged into the same Google account, I can just open the app now and go to my library, and I'll see that this there with that initial starting image and description that I had is there and available for download. Again, I would download that, and then I'm ready to use it with my students. So now let's take a look at what are the logistics for running this in your classroom. How do you make this VR really work well for you and your students? Okay, first you need to plan for this day a day or two in advance. The steps are pretty straightforward though. You're going to get your phones and your headsets together. You're going to make sure everything's charged up. Occasionally you'll need to take a look and see if there are any phone OS updates or if there's an update to the Google Expedition app. If that's the case, you'll need to put those devices on the internet to pull those down and then finish that out. The next thing you'll need to do is you'll need to find, modify, or make the Google Expedition that you're going to do with your students. Now, when you do that, you're going to pull that down to the teacher device only. The student devices will never need to download anything except the Google Expeditions app. So again, only the teacher device will have that downloaded. That teacher device could be a tablet. It could even be a personal cell phone. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you can get the Expeditions app downloaded to that device and then connect that device to the same network that the student devices will join as well. That's how those are going to communicate. Okay, while we're talking about the networking side of stuff, this is actually easy but really important. Now the teacher and student devices will need to be on the same network like we just said, but that network needs to allow for device discovery. Now my district, for example, we have device discovery blocked, and that's a security measure here within our district. Now our way to work around this has been to grab an old home router that you see in the top left of your screen. That travels around with our VR set. Now remember that you've already downloaded the expedition that you're going to do with your students to that teacher device. Once that's downloaded, you don't actually need the internet connection anymore. So all you need to do is plug that home router into the wall. That's going to broadcast a local network that your student devices and your teacher devices can join. And that will let them have this, what we call the parent-child relationship. Now you can see in your diagram here that the router is broadcasting that local network. One more tip on this is to name that something that's easy to recognize, maybe Expeditions. And then also take the password to join that network off if one is there. So devices can just click to join. It's going to save you a little bit of time and headache trying to type the password over and over again in each of these devices. Also keep in mind there's no safety vulnerability there. Remember that that is not actually going out to the actual internet. It's only a local network. So if a person added their personal cell phone device to that network, they're not actually hitting the internet. Once that is broadcasting, attach all of your devices, teacher device first, and then all your student devices. Once done, these devices are going to be able to see each other as much as they need to. The way these work is the teacher device will be running the Expedition app. On the student device, they will open the Expedition app, they'll click to join that teacher, and then once the teacher hits play, the students will begin seeing those predetermined scenes from that expedition through their headset. They'll be able to look around and interact as the teacher has set that expedition up. Okay, some more just tips on VR in your classroom. Keep your hardware's limitations in mind. You have some battery considerations. Expeditions or anytime you're showing that 360 video, it takes a lot out of your batteries. It takes a lot out of your phones. So you want to keep in mind not only this class, but you need enough time to charge those devices again for the next class. So just be aware of that. Have a charging station set up where you can charge 10 or 12 at a time. That's going to help you keep those batteries working well for each new group that comes in. Speaking of reusing the device for the next block, you always want to have a can of sanitizing wipes that travels with your VR set as well. Now you can either, I've passed this around to kids before, wipe these down and power them off before you hand them back to me. I've also gone through and sanitized those myself, especially given our current climate now, but even without a COVID world, you always want to sanitize these in between use as it's going to have direct contact with the students' faces. So other tips, anytime that you're doing an expedition and you take the students to a new scene in their headset, go ahead and give those students about 20 seconds to look around. They want to see what's around them. You're not going to have great success trying to keep their attention in a new scene until they've looked around. So just go ahead and build into your lesson that you're going to give them about 20 seconds to look around. Then you'll do some sort of transitional cue to them to say, okay, now we're going to talk through what you're looking at. All right, even if students are highly engaged, I would never take this past 20 minutes. So VR has a great cool factor. You're going to get their attention, but just like with anything else, that attention is waning after a certain amount of time. The personal sweet spot for me is around 20 minutes, and then I would go to a different activity altogether, have them power down, wipe those devices down, and then those would go back into the charging area. Last but certainly not least, you want, while there is a big cool factor here, you want to keep this all about the curriculum. Now, people do this in different ways, and I've seen it done well in many different ways. But obviously, first is, in your selection of expedition, make it about the content. Other ways that you can steer students to focus on your content, though, is you can have a guided notes activity or a summarizing activity that would work as a follow-up or a wrap-up for that. You could also preload this by giving them some sort of inquiry. What are they trying to solve through what they're going to see in this expedition? So again, you've got that questioning piece going on, but you give it more of a purpose, and that purpose is all about your curriculum. So here are our big takeaways from what we've talked about. First, VR is absolutely worth your time in your classroom. Anywhere from kindergarten through 12th grade, it gives you a great opportunity to gain attention, to tell stories or a narrative of what we're learning about. It gives you a great opportunity to bring in the visual as well as the audio pieces to get some of those sensory things going on, a little bit of motion going on in your room as well. And it just mix it up. The next thing I saw, or I hope you saw, is that Google Expeditions has a lot of material out there, as do some of our other providers. But don't be afraid of TourCreator. It's really not that tough. If you can operate PowerPoint, then you can operate TourCreator as well. I would think about building in maybe just a couple of hours for your first one. After you get that first one under your belt, it's going to go very, very quickly for you. You'll be able to, again, lay them out just as quickly as you would a PowerPoint and take your kids on a virtual field trip to wherever it is that we're learning about that day. Last but certainly not least, there's nothing about a TourCreator that has to be done by the teacher. TourCreators work just as effectively when students make them. We've had students that would go on field trips with a band and they documented their trip. And when they came back, they told the rest of the class about it. And again, they're kind of reinforcing in that particular case the storytelling ability, the linear flow of information, bringing those visuals too. But think about that from history. Think about that in your elementary classrooms as far as communicating setting. Think about Canterbury Tales, going from location to location. All these different things, students can do those again. I really encourage that. We want our kids out there producing, making more. They can share it to you with that link. Remember at the very end when we clicked publish, it gave us a link. You can copy that and the kid can send it to you through Google Classroom or Canvas. So folks, there you have it. That ends our session here on Google Expeditions and TourCreator and just generally running VR in your classroom. Hopefully I've been able to answer some questions for you and help you get kick-started along the way to incorporating this into your practice. At this link, you'll find a chance to evaluate us, let us know how we're doing in this session in particular, as well as be awarded your CEUs for your time. If you have any questions, comments, ways to make this better, anything that I can help you with, please reach out at Twitter at WillHerring16 or email at whering@ncmcs.org. Thanks so much. Have a great day.